Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, today we have a second lecture on our lecture series of parliamentary system and its evolution, and the precise topic for discussion is legislative reform in India. We have already discussed the evolution of parliamentary system starting from the 1773 Act to up to cabinet mission, and we will move on further up to constitution, and we will discuss what are the constitutional procedures for amendment and other lawmakings. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in studio Dr. Satish Kumar. He is a known columnist and he teaches political science in Meerut University. So I hope his knowledge and experience will help us to understand the legislative reform in India in a new perspective. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. Kumar for EduSet lecture. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a very important and relevant theme for all of us. What is the constitutions, how it has functioned in the last 60 to 64 years, what are the major changes have taken place, and how it has impacted on the lives of the people of India. And we all know the debate and discussion is going on before the constitution came into practice, whether parliamentary form of government is better or presidential form of government is better. But before coming into the debate of between the parliamentary form and presidential form of government, let us have the basic understanding of what is constitutions, what are the major differences in terminology of constitution and constitutional law, constitutionalism, and many other terms which are being used. And we will also try to discuss the salient feature of Indian constitutions, what are its major objectives, and then definitely we will come to emphasize and focus on the progress of parliamentary form of government and its on its way, the major hurdles and challenges. When we try to describe about constitution, a number of definitions are being quoted. In the nutshell, it is understood as a set of rules which dictate the political system of any country. We have our own constitutions. Many other countries have their own constitutions, and they follow the guidelines with long-term objectives which are being inscribed in the constitutions. But when we discuss and compare the term of constitutions and constitutional law, constitutionalism, the different meanings derived from all these three words. As the constitution is a set of laws, the set of laws which run to assign the responsibilities of the state organs which have given major responsibilities in catering the services to the people of their country. When we describe about constitutionalism, it means a limited government. The word, when it comes to constitutionalism, it means that it limits the power of the certain organs of the government. It means that whether it is legislative, our judiciary, our executive, the offices of the Prime Minister, the offices of the President, of any other post, it does not have unlimited power. It is controlled and restrained by laws. That is why it is called limited government. Constitutionalism means limited government. At the same time, it is also assumed that a perfect and ideal constitution and system of constitutionalism will prosper and succeed in the amicable situation of a democratic setup. But we all know that there are many countries in the world which are not politically democratic, but they have their constitutions. We have certain glaring examples of Egypt and adjoining states where the revolt took place in the last 1 month, and it has forced almost a dictator, ruler come dictator, who ruled the Egypt for almost 3 decades, and he was forced to vacate his post and took shelter in Western countries. It happens because of the resentment of the people, because that government was not a constitutional government. It was not a limited government. It acted on its own whims and wishes. It has misused the power of his positions, and that is not feasible within the framework of a constitutional government. We have an example in India. Whenever the government try to exceed the limit of the constitution, it has been struck down, because in every step there is a check and balance. If a particular organ of the government tries to exceed its power, whether it is judiciary or whether it is executive or legislature, within the framework of the constitution, the trap is being created and it has to fall down within the trap. So that is the basic terms of 3 terminology which I have used: constitution, constitutional law, and constitutionalism. We all cannot say that these 3 words are the same. Now, we will discuss, as it has been aware that till the cabinet mission plan, the development of Indian constitution has been already discussed by other experts. So we will try to focus after the cabinet mission plan, what was the major development in the framing of the constitution of India. The most important factor which took place in the framing of the Indian constitution was an establishment of the Constituent Assembly. If you relate how the Constituent Assembly came into being, there is a reference in 1919 Act. There was an implicit descriptions of the Constituent Assembly, but for the first time in 1922, Gandhiji had expressed the concept of the Constituent Assembly to frame a separate constitution for India. As we all know that under the cabinet mission plan, the kind of system which was chalked out to frame the constitution of India, within that framework we cannot say that that Constituent Assembly, the framework of the Constituent Assembly describes about a sovereign constitutions of India, because it was a British plan, and till then India was not freed. India was not independent. So the concept of the Constituent Assembly was also under the dog of the British regime. But when 1947 Act came into practice, in which the hallmark, that was the description of Nehru, we the people of India, that announced and declared that now India is a sovereign country. And when the Constituent Assembly was being established on the premises of 1947 Act, it was a sovereign Constituent Assembly. And Constituent Assembly had had many members, and all the prominent figures, those who were alive at the time, became part and parcel of that Constituent Assembly. From all top sort leaders from the different ideological groups. So they were the stalwarts. They were the founding fathers of the Indian Constitution. They had not only the vision and sense of making India a viable and a strong political system, but at the same time they were experts of different constitutions. They have gone through, they have read thoroughly between the lines of the constitution of different countries like America, Canada, Australia, Switzerland, many other countries they have gone through. And they did not try to copy, but they have copied the certain things which were applicable and meaningful in the context of India. So there is a very general criticism which is being written in the many books about the Indian Constitution, that it is a cut and paste. But in fact, it is a very general critical view. The fact is that it has tried to read the sense and heart of the meaning of certain provisions, and it copied only as amounts which were good for us. So we cannot say that it is a merely cut and paste practices. Now we will try to see how the Constituent Assembly finally come out with a long documents of different practices into one book that is known the Constitution of India. As we all know that after the establishment of the Constituent Assembly, the Constituent Assembly was divided into many groups. Many committees were being formed. Like almost all the important subjects, there was a separate committees. Like on the fundamental rights, there was a different committees. For directive principles, there was a different committees. For the language issue, there was a different committees. For the directive principles, there was different committees. So a committee was being headed by a prominent figure, and who was supposed to be the best capable and efficient person. And after that committee, the responsibility of the committee was to see, read and assemble all the laws which are applicable for the people of this country. That was not only a merely exercise. After bringing it together, it was debated in the Constituent Assembly, and when finally the Constituent Assembly came into believe that it is supposed to be a perfect one, then it was open to the dais for the people. So it is a known fact that after assembling of almost jumble of all laws together, it took almost 2 years, more than 8 months and 18 days. Almost approximately it took 3 years. And finally, it was then open to the people of India. Many amendments were accorded, many amendments took place. And still, as we know that the amendments are taking place to adjust the changing lifestyle, changing problems, and focusing on the betterment of the people of India. Recently, there was a book has come on the Indian Constitution, in which one of the retired Chief Justice of India has very happily acknowledged this fact that in the coming 500 to 600 years, this constitution is the best constitution of India. It is not going to fail. And because it has a certain space, he said that the Indian constitution has given such a wonderful document that it gives a lot of space for the changing paradigm, for changing economic, political, and social situations. So, as we all know that when the constitution is being challenged, when there is a resentment in the people, when there is faith that this constitution is not in a position to analyze the changing economic and political situations of this country. So it is believed by almost all the jurists, by almost all the experts of this country, that this constitution is going to survive in coming 5 to 600 years in future. So there is no lacuna, there is no fault line in the constitutions. And this debate was also discussed when the review committee was set up in 2001 under the Vajpayee government to review the constitutions of India. And why it was done? We all know this fact that one after another hung parliament was coming into force, and because of the hung parliament, the people had lost the faith in the parliamentary setup system. Election within 6 months, and it has created almost a political turmoil. And the alliance politics in India was, to a certain extent, was not very successful. So they were trying, many experts, they coined the term that we need to copy the German system, we need to copy the French system, in which major component of the system is a presidential form of government that could be more durable. So these were factors were analyzed whenever the political crisis came into being. And it was also discussed that whether this constitution is capable of taking into account the political changes which are taking place in India. All the top minds of this country sit together, and when they try to analyze each and every aspect of the constitutions and its functioning of the 50 years, once again they came to the same conclusion that this constitution is perfect, there is no problem in the constitution, but the political organs which were trying to implement the constitutions, they failed. The system in which it was being implemented, there is a problem in that system, so that need to be rectified. And there is no basic lacuna in the documents which we have in the form of constitutions. So these were things were all earlier discussed. Now we will try to discuss what are the major disputed points which were being discussed in the Constituent Assembly. Number of, as I told you, that each and every subject was analyzed, but still some of the problems which still exist and that were the problems during the making of the constitutions, uh, where certain provisions are there. One is parliamentary form of government versus presidential form of government. Now let us understand what are the basic difference between the parliamentary form of government and presidential form of government. The basic difference is being discussed on the separation of power. Like in the presidential form of government, there are three, a state has three organs: executive, legislature, and judiciary. In presidential form of government, all the three organs are almost separate. They are autonomous. They are not integral part of each other, and they work separately accordingly and support each other. So it is based on the logic of separation of power. Whereas the presidency in the parliamentary form of government, the executive is responsible to the legislature. It means that like in India, any government is in power or will be in power till it has support in its lower house of the parliament, that is Lok Sabha. The moment it loses its balance or majority, it has to go. So this is one criteria. There are other many factors which define the parliamentary form of government. In the parliamentary form of government, the basic understanding is that it is the people who are the supreme. It is the representative of the people who choose their leader as the Prime Minister of India, who works for the interest of this country, is much better suited to the people of India. And that is why, while all the experts, except few, were in favor of parliamentary form of government in India, the logic was very simple. India was almost under the 200 years of the rule of the British parliamentary form of government. And they realized this fact that since we are well aware or we are in tune with the parliamentary form of government, we know how it functions, how it is being run, what are the major organs, what are the major agencies, and what are the major challenges and lacuna. So they were aware of this fact, and that is why they selected, they identified, they came to the decision that parliamentary form of government is better suited in the diversified country like India, which is divided on the name of religion, it is divided on the name of reasons, it is divided on the name of languages and many other identities. So the interest of all the groups cannot be addressed accordingly and properly in the presidential form of government, where the one man will be the supreme. And the kind of system which exists in America or France or other presidents where the presidential form of government work are different from India. And that is why this decision was taken, and still most of the experts of the constitution in India, the Chief Justice, retired Chief Justice of the High Court and Supreme Courts, the legal brain of India, they still believe that parliamentary form of government is still more suitable in the context of India, in spite of its certain lacuna, certain shortcomings. It cannot be changed from parliamentary form to presidential form of government. But many people can have different views. They can differ what we say and what we teach, but that is the understanding of the brains of India. The second major disputed factor which came into existence, and still it is a matter of debate within India, is federal versus unitary. they call it, let's understand what is what does it mean by federal. When we talk about the federal structure, it simply means that there is a decentralization of power between between the center and units. In India, if you read the complete constitutions, we will never come to identify even a single word as a federal being used in Indian constitution. Why it has not been used? The chairman of the drafting committee, Dr. Ambedkar, has very thoughtfully explained this fact that uh, the the word Union of India is being used. Why it has been used? It has, all we know that it to a certain extent the different regions of India, they are being amalgamated into Indian Union. At the same time, they are not being accorded with the power to secede from India. If the word federal is being used, it might have been possible that some state would have demanded the separation from India. And if we read the history since 1947, we all know that certain situations politically being created in India, the movement and turmoil, political turmoil in the northeastern states, the movement in Jammu and Kashmir, the political turmoil in Punjab, and certain sections which were supported by outsider to create a Khalistan. Likewise, many states had this kind of secessionist forces which were trying to secede from India, and that is why it has been said very thoughtfully by the drafting chairman, Dr. Ambedkar, that that is why the word federal was not being used. So the simple meaning of the federal word is a division of power between center and units. Now let us say, is our constitution is federal? There is a debate and people still differ. What are the major components when we talk about the federal structure? What are the major components and features of the federalism? The one is division of power. Second is supremacy of the courts. Third is finally the power should be in the hands of the people. There should be a democratic setup. Taking into account of the major components of the federal structure, we identify that India has a federal structure. But when we compare the federal structure with other countries, we realize this fact that definitely India does not match with the federal structure of America, which is supposed to be an ideal federal structure in the world, or of Canada, Australia, or Switzerland, or South Africa, or many other countries. In India, there is obvious tilt towards unitary system. There are many instances could be described, like the appointments of the governor in the states. Still, if you read the newspaper, you will come to identify thousands of the cases where the governor has played a partisan role as a communicator of the central government, and they try to sabotage the state government which were being ruled by other political parties other than the central government. And on the report of the governor, quite number of times, the political party which used to be in power in the center played this card, and they used the Article 356 to dismantle the state government. So that shows the division of power on the basis of the constitution is very fragile. The chairman of the drafting committee, Dr. Ambedkar, once again, while analyzing each and every part of the constitution, he said about the Article 356 that it is a sacrosanct article. It will be hardly used in the context of India. But in the history of 60 to almost 64 years, this article is the most misused article in the context of India. And that is why, once again, it is said that we do not have the real federal structure, whereas we have a quasi-federal structure. Like number of things, a parliament can make laws. As we all know, that there are three lists in Indian context: central list, state list, and concurrent list. On the subject of the central list, the central government are supposed to make laws. On the subject of a state list, it is a state government which are supposed to make laws. On the concurrent list, both can make laws. But whenever there is a conflict of interest, it is the central list which will dictate the terms. And as we all know that almost all the important subjects are being covered in the central list. There are also provisions of leeway. Under Article 249, the Parliament can make laws on the state list. And on the concurrent list, if there is a conflict between the center and a state, if the both governments make laws on the same subject, that is the will or wish of the central government will prevail on the state government. So these are within the federal structure. These are the provisions within the constitutions which amplify that there is overriding factors which prove that Indian constitution has a very weak federal structure. Number of organizations which will be cropped up, like the planning commissions and other, which also prove this fact that not only in the political terms but in economic and otherwise, the federal structure of India is very weak. So this debate is still going on, and definitely there is improvement in strengthening the federal structure of India. As the system from one party to multi-party and coalition politics are taking place, as the democracy day by day is getting strengthened, then the federal structure at the same time is also being emboldened and getting its roots in India. So there are positive changes, there are positive outcomes out of the constitutions which are taking place in India. Now, the third very disputed subjects which were being discussed in the Constituent Assembly, and still it is a matter of great debate after the implementation of the constitutions. Even today, after almost 60 years, this is going on, whether our constitution is too flexible or inflexible. If we read the procedures of amendment in the constitution under Article 368, we come to know that India has three types of system to amend the constitutions. One is very simple, even that does not certify the amendments. Another is a bit tough, and a third one is a very tough, which needs ratifications of more than two-thirds of the states. So we have all three kind of set of systems under which the amendment of the constitution take place. Here we need to understand why the members of the Constituent Assembly try to be very flexible while enacting the procedure of the amendment. When India became independent, it did not have a very strong political, economic, or social setup. But the founding fathers had the vision. As the nation grows, a very different and complex set of political, social, and economic system will come up. It will challenge the system. And if the constitution, the final document of the law, does not have a space to guidelines or absorb the challenges which with the time will come, then this constitution will fail. And that is why any constitution needs amendment. If you describe about the US Constitution in the last more than 300 years, it did not have more than 24 to 25 amendments, but we have more than 100 amendments within 60 years. It depends on the situations. It depends on the demands of the people. It depends on the social and political structure of the country. We have altogether a very different set of system. The relation between one community to another community, the factor of equality, liberty, fraternity, these are all important factors which force to mend its way. And we all know that every day we mend and amend our life. And as a country, as a nation state, this also needs ratifications, modifications in its way to make the lives of this country more beautiful, better, and accommodative. So the equal opportunity should come to all individuals in their path of success. Third, the fourth very disputed and hot debate took place in the Constituent Assembly was the issue of language. Hindi versus English. While reading the thought of Gandhi and other founding fathers, they had this opinion and views that Indian Constitution could be only successful if it has its own language. And after very thoughtful and meaningful exercise by our founding fathers, our father of the nation, Gandhiji, he said that it is the only Hindi language which can link the people of India, those who are divided by the regions, those who are divided by the race and language. It could be the only medium of communications which can unite together. And that is why he was in favor of the Hindi language. And as in the constitutions, the provisions were being made that Hindi is going to be the language of our nations. This was not absorbed by the people of South India. And first debate took place in the Constituent Assembly. There was hot debate, and they they were angered in which the language of Hindi was implemented, and it was proposed to be implemented. So, what should be the medium of communications within the country? So, the government took a very a different stand on the issue of language, and it tried to accommodate English, at the same time keeping in view that in the future the Hindi would be the language of this country. All the official debates in the high courts and the Supreme Courts will take place in English. At the same time, Hindi translation will be available. It will not be forced upon the southern states which were aligned and unknown to the Hindi language. So this debate is still going on in this country, but the many other factors, the changing scenario of social and economic organs like media, film and other have impressed the people of South India to come to the terms of believing this fact that Hindi could be a uniting force. Now this debate is slightly has been forgotten and adjusted and realized by the people of South Asia as well, southern states as well, that this could be the language of communications. The division of a state was another major issue was being discussed in the Constituent Assembly. How the division should take place within India. It should be divided on the basis of administrative comforts, or it should be divided on the issue of the language. Again, the language became very important. As we all know that a very prominent leader and follower of Gandhi, he advocated that the division of a state should be only on the basis of the language. The people who speak Telugu will have their own state. The people who speak Tamil will have their own state. But the leaders of the India, they were very suspicious about it. Once this card is being played of language, India will have more than 100 states, and that will be very difficult to rule. So they wanted to mix. In fact, they wanted to base the division of the state on the issue of administrative comforts. But when a prominent leader sat on dharna and he passed away on dharna after 51 days, that created a turmoil in South India. And finally, the Nehru government came into pressure, and the state of Andhra Pradesh was divided on the basis of language. And then this system of division of a state started taking place on the language issue. It continued till in the 60s as well, when Punjab and Haryana was divided into two different states on the basis of language. On the Punjabi, it was called Punjab, and on the Hindi belt area was known as Haryana. So this debate is still going on. But in the last 3 states which are being made in 2001, crafted from the 3 bigger states, one from MP, one from Bihar, and one from Uttar Pradesh. These new states were not created on the basis of language. It was merely created on the basis of administrative comforts. So these were the major components of the disputed areas in which the Constituent Assembly debated very hotly, and they came into conclusion. And these debates subjects are still matter of confusion and fresh ideas, and many people come out with the new ideas to uh, identify the debate which took place in the Constituent Assembly. Now, let us understand how the parliamentary system in India has functioned from its inception of the constitutions. What are the major challenges have taken place? Before coming into the practices of the parliamentary form of government, let us have the vision which were described in the preamble of the Constitution. As we all know that what is the preamble of the Constitution? The preamble of the Constitution of any country that describes aims and objectives on which the document which is known as the Constitution foresees itself. It every day attempts to go ahead on the basis of its objectives. Likewise, in India also, when the Pandit Nehru said, "We the people of India," that identifies the preamble of the constitutions, and it come out with the many words like sovereignty, socialism, secularism, democracy, republican character, justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, individual dignity, integrity, and unity of the country. These are the terms which were being used in our preamble. So what does it mean? When we talk about the sovereignty, what does it connote in terms of India? It means that after the establishment of the Constituent Assembly, India became a sovereign country. Sovereign means it is free from external pressure, and internally it is capable of meeting any challenges. It is not under the pressure of any outsider to follow its decision. So after 1947 Act, India was completely independent, and Constituent Assembly has its own setup which was independent. Second, socialism. As we all know that the word socialism was not being used while framing of the constitutions. It was purposefully not used. It was not used because that they founding fathers of the constitution, they do not want to fall into the trap of ideological debate. There was intent of socialist factors within the framework of the constitutions, and socialism in simple terms means distribution of wealth, distribution of productions. There should be equality. There should be one should not be rich and another should not be so poor to do not have do not have enough food to eat. That was the basic meaning of socialism in Indian terms. But under the when it was pressurized and when it became necessary, then through the 42nd Amendment, this word was being used. Secularism. Secularism, it means that a state will not have its own religion. In simple terms, for the state, every religion, every practitioner of the religion have equal values in our society. So one whether the majority community or minority community should not feel alienated or threatened by any other community. Democracy, the democratic setup, it means that the best practices of parliamentary form of government is feasible only in a democratic setup. As I told you, that many other countries which have the constitutions, but all the countries are not democratic. We have seen the examples which took place in Egypt, Algeria, and many other countries. Last year, in Thailand, there was a democracy. We can see what is happening in Myanmar. We can see what is happening in Pakistan. So all these countries have the constitution, but within the constitutions, their practices are not democratic, and that is why the political turmoil quite often take place. We see almost all the democratic countries like USA, Australia, India, to a certain extent Sri Lanka, France, Germany, they have a very strong base of democratic setup, and that is why it was not being challenged. Now, justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity, these are the factors which were being analyzed within our constitutions. It amply proves that in parliamentary form of setup or democratic setup, it provides an equal opportunity to each and every individual. One should not be alienated, like liberty is a negative term which connotes about a laissez-faire, where one individual wants to do whatever he or she wants to do. But at the same time, he or she has to move around within the framework of the democratic setup. We have the right to criticize the government, but there is a system to criticize the government. We cannot use the vulgar language. We cannot use a certain set of system and parliamentary system which are not supposed to be. So these are all the factors which jumble together to make our parliamentary system a successful exercise. But in spite of that, there are numerous examples in which our parliamentary system failed to address. And one of the major criticism which we all see today, the criminalization of politics. And number of media groups, they have come out that more than 30% of our parliamentarians, those who represent and those who sit and frame the laws of India, are criminals. So the basic documents of our constitutions are in the hands of the criminals, as it has been said. There is ample truth in saying so. So why it has been so? It means that as the people of India, we elect the kind of person who have a criminal background. And this happens because of the factors of ignorance. It happens because of the lack of education. It happens because of the lack of literacy. As the nation progresses, as the more people get aware, we can see a better result. And the last 10 to 15 years, we might have seen changes, the kind of the people they have reacted, like in the elections in Bihar, the elections in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, where the party which came into power, which have really worked for the interest of the people. So the people are coming out from the moorings of the conservative terms of caste, religion, and creed. They are voting for the government. They are voting for the political party which are making their lives better economically, socially, and politically. So these are the factors which will make India a successful parliamentary democracy in the coming days and months and years. Thank you.
Okay, since we adopted the constitution, we have seen a number of amendments, and sometimes what we have also noticed, what is amended in one amendment is changed. So, do you think that this, without considering the facts how this amendment will give shape to the constitution or the direction to the society, good to do this?
Definitely, it happened in the 60s and 70s, where India was being ruled by one party system, where it had larger number of MPs within its fold to make any laws in the parliament. But after 90s, where the politics of alliance started taking place, that has become very difficult to amend any laws, and the other government to change the laws which have been implemented by erstwhile government. So it is an indication of positive changes. Means the laws should be made for the interest of the people of India, not for the certain segment of the society on which a particular government or its political interest is trying to focus. So that could be a very partisan and conservative framework in which the parliamentary system could fail, and that will harm to a large extent. So it is not in the interest of this country.
Okay, the last question I would like to ask you. We have a number of laws, number of regulations, number of things, but the more harm is of being manipulated for certain purposes. Do we have a safeguard? And we need a safeguard which will not which will hinder to do so in coming days. Means heavy kind of punishment so that nobody can manipulate the law.
Uh, as we all know that in the successful democracy, there is a in the meaning of the constitutions and constitutional government, it means that the supreme is law. That is the supremacy of the constitutions. It means law is the supreme. When we talk about the parliamentary system of Britain, we talk about the supremacy of the parliament. As we all know that there is a famous quotations in parliamentary system in Britain that British Parliament can make anything possible except a male to female, female to male. That only thing which cannot do. It means that the supreme body in Britain is the parliament. But in India, it is not the parliament which is the supreme body. It is the constitution which is supreme body. And the constitution being is checked by the judicial, a strong judicial system. So whoever commits any crime in India is likely to be punished by the court. Whether he is a man of power or man of money. And in the recent examples, in the 60s and 70s, the general people did not have faith in democratic setup because all the top brass, after committing crimes, went scot-free. But in the last few years, because of the media focus, because of the awareness of the people, all the big fishes are all also being caught and they were being put behind the bars. So there is a hope that as the parliamentary democracy get strengthened in India, this kind of system will become a trend and nobody will try to hurt and dictate the terms as it fits into his capacity within the law.
So well friends, as Dr. Kumar said that we have various checks and counter checks that keep the democracy vibrant and more effective. So with this word we would like to conclude the lecture, and I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on your behalf I thank Dr. Satish Kumar for giving such a wonderful lecture. Thank you very much.